Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kat.
Good to see you. Thank you for being open to joining me for this conversation. So, for those of you who do not know the wonderful Sarah, Sarah and I actually met each other originally over a decade ago at SoundCloud, which is wild to think about. And Sarah was a lead designer and one of the most senior presences on the team. Then, when I left SoundCloud, we kind of went off and did our separate things for a while. Eventually, in 2020, I began to work at Asana, thanks to Sarah for hiring me in that position at Asana in my first staff designer role. And I definitely learned and grew so much during that time. So when I started thinking about writing a book all about what it means to be a staff designer, I was like, obviously, I need to make sure that I have the OGs give some feedback on how I'm framing everything. And so Sarah was a huge help in reviewing the manuscript of the book and providing a lot of incredible feedback. And since the time that we worked together, Sarah has actually transitioned over to the world of leadership coaching. That's also just been great because now Sarah works with lots of senior leaders, including individual contributor leaders. With that said, I will let Sarah introduce herself. Sarah, what have you been up to? What's going on?
First off, thanks, Kat, for the intro. I love being called an OG. That just tickles me in my heart. And yes, I've had the pleasure of crossing paths with you multiple times, and that has been so wonderful. Happy to still be so in your orbit. What have I been up to? So I was in tech for a couple decades and then transitioned into leadership coaching, as you said. And over the last year, I've been focused a lot on Gradient, my leadership coaching business, and growing it and being really deliberate about the type of people I take on as coaching clients. I coach a variety of people. I don't care about titles at all, but what I do care about is coaching people who have an appetite for growth and a readiness for change. And I care deeply about supporting creative leaders. So that means that a lot of the people or the bulk of my clients are design leaders and ranging from product design leaders to visual design, motion, etc.
So awesome. It's wonderful that you get to take all of your prior experience as a leader in-house and to translate that into driving and supporting folks who are trying to figure it out themselves. So thank you for the continuous work that you do to pay it forward with folks. I've also worked with you in that capacity when I was reporting to you. There were obviously moments where I had to navigate organizational complexity. And so I'm curious over the years what you've seen to be some of the most common beliefs that hold senior designers back from operating at a higher altitude.
These are some of the themes that come up most, honestly, not just with staff level ICs, but also with managers and directors, is influence. People come to me for coaching around influence, and that's increasing their strategic influence, confidently influencing a room of people that are senior to them. And oftentimes people have a lot of obstacles around that. That is one piece. Another one is just developing skills around communication and clearly articulating your point of view, doing that at the executive level, which means incredibly concise, to the point, and speaking their language. Things like how to work with challenging stakeholders. So there's a lot that can get in the way. Things like managing up decision making, knowing your place in the room, when to be strategic, when to be tactical. These are all in the mix around that.
That's also something that I myself had heard a lot of before transitioning from senior to staff. I needed to have more influence and I needed to learn how to better manage up. Before I made the switch, I didn't really understand what some of those words meant fully from your perspective. And obviously, you don't have to give away all the coaching techniques and everything. What does influence mean to you, and what does managing up mean? I know you mentioned making sure to speak their language. Like,
Yeah.
how do you know that you're influencing? What does that look like?
Influence is being listened to, right? At its most basic level. So, how do you know you're listened to? Well, you know because you're invited into the right conversations. You're no longer in this world where you're like, wait, a meeting just happened and I wish I was there. You are in the meeting. So, that's how you know. Also, your work is getting prioritized. Your ideas are getting traction. A really common one that is a good measurement for am I being listened to is, are there sound bites that you've been saying that get repeated throughout the organization? Whether that's actual user quotes that you've been mentioning and repeating. And then you find your engineering partners or your PM partners are saying the same stuff. Or it could be even visual screenshots that you've been sharing. And then that work starts to get shared. These are moments that you know, it goes beyond me. I've scaled my influence.
People are talking about your ideas without you particularly having to be present, pushing them on
Right.
people.
Right.
Okay.
Because you've chosen the right places to articulate your point of view, you're listened to, your work is respected, and then it takes on a life of its own, whether it's through other people, other designers on your team, or it's cross-functional folks.
That makes
Mhm.
sense. And then you also mentioned the phrase managing up. Can you speak a
Yeah.
little bit to that as well?
People have all sorts of different configurations in their companies, different reporting relationships. But at its basic level, what can happen for a lot of folks is that as a staff IC, you're reporting to people that are actually quite senior. And in a one-on-one conversation, managing up is coming with a clear agenda, knowing within that agenda which are the things that you're meant to inform your manager on, what are the things that need discussion, what are the things that need decision, being so specific about what your needs from that meeting are that you are efficient with your time. And that means in a 30-minute one-on-one, you can get a lot out of it and you help your manager manage you. So managing up is helping your leaders do their job and helping them help you, right? So in
Yeah.
a one-on-one, it's like maybe that's how it might manifest, but this can happen in a room of senior leaders as well, right? Like when you're presenting a vision, managing up is coming with a really clear articulated point of view and a recommendation and not leaving it just as a question. Okay, I've presented the problem. What do we want to do? That's not managing up. Managing up is saying, here's what I think we should do. Do you agree? Let's have a conversation.
I like that a lot, and that feels very resonant with my own work as well.
Mm,
I usually try not to make people think too much because they're already context switching a lot. So the
right.
idea that I show up and I'm like, well, this is the problem. What are we going to do about it? That's not the right approach. That's frustrating for people who have honestly a lot going on and they
Yeah.
trust you at that level to be able to drive with a certain level of perspective. And really, the
Mm-hmm.
question is, do you agree or not? But
Mm-hmm.
what do you say potentially to a designer who's like, well, that's not my job. I didn't want to get hired just so I could do my boss's job. Like, how do you respond to that?
There is blurriness in roles. There will always be blurriness in roles. And whether you manage people or you don't, at the staff level, you are a design leader. So I think accepting that I am a leader on this team means there are leadership parts of your role that maybe you're not used to doing and it's a little uncomfortable. But I think this whole thing of, oh, that's my manager's job. There are things that are distinctly your manager's job. It is not your job as a staff designer to hire and fire and not your job to do the people management stuff. That is for sure outside of scope. And maybe there's even organizational decisions of like how do you want to reorg that are also out of scope. But in certain universes, even that's not out of scope. You may have a perspective of like how your team should be positioned in the org and you should be articulating it. So I feel like a lot of this, oh, that's not my job. I think the answer is it sort of is. As leaders, there's overlap. It's blurry.
I,
Yeah.
as a staff designer, have certainly been on large scale projects where I've worked with design managers and design directors to figure out who should we put on this portion of the project that you're leading? Who
Hmm.
do you think would be the best person
Hmm.
to drive this portion of the work? And I'm happy to have that conversation because it means, to your point earlier, that I do have influence and people trust my opinion. It doesn't always feel the most natural, but it is, in fact, often a good thing when a leader is asking you for your opinion about things. And then sometimes there might be a situation where your leader is really busy, and if they understand that you will be supportive even in those times where they are kind of asking
Hmm.
you to stretch a little bit, it's probably worth it in the long run, I would hope, to kind of
Yeah.
extend that kindness to that person who's already probably got 20 reports or something.
And there's definitely boundaries. We don't want to cross a line of, wait a second, I'm doing more of their job than I'm doing mine. That's no good. But a little bit of blurriness means good collaboration across the board,
Love
whether
that.
it's you with your manager or it's you with your peers.
Something else that I am also curious
Mm.
about that I feel like you do really well is speaking the language of leaders around you.
Hmm.
I've observed that a lot of designers, and this used to be me as well, there's this gap where they mostly speak about the value of design or certain work that we could be doing in terms of qualitative information or design terms, and they really struggle to translate it into the language of the people who are actually making the resourcing decisions, the prioritization
Mhm.
decisions. Where does that gap come from, and what do you usually advise people to do to change that?
So, where does it come from? I think it comes from a place of, as designers, it's our job to be connected to customer needs, to have really strong user empathy. This reliance on UXR and usability testing, which is important and like really key to making sure we're solving the right problems, is a piece of the puzzle. But in terms of what motivates or drives our PM partners and executive leaders in the company, it's things that are either making the company money or saving the company money. And when it comes to that, it's very hard to be like, oh, usability testing translates directly into that. It doesn't directly translate. The piece that holds folks back is unfamiliarity with business acumen, with knowing what are these things that people care about and how do I map my work to those things. One of the first pieces of advice that I have for people who are like, okay, I want to back more of my design up with data or I want to make more of a business case is to learn what metrics your company cares about. And when I say that, of course, there's going to be different metrics depending, but the people that are in your reporting line, learn what they care about. I mentioned making money. Making money could be ARR, it could be retention, it could be things like monthly active users or signups. And then saving money could be things like less support tickets or improving processes for the team or reducing development time, things like this. And of course, there's another bucket here that's not directly making or saving money that depending on your environment could still be very compelling, which is customer satisfaction. So things like NPS or brand perception or engagement, things like click rates or tracking certain flows. There are ways to translate our work into metrics that then are speaking the language of the business leaders that we're trying to influence. So this is the way to get people to listen, is that they are being measured by certain success for the year. And if the work that we present up to them is like, oh, this is going to have an impact on the thing you care about, well, then it makes it a lot easier. And this doesn't mean, oh, that's the only thing you have to do. Of course, it has to be paired with strong storytelling and good ideas and strategy and presenting a clear point of view. There's other pieces, but the metrics and the language of the room is so key.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a combination of, yes, like firstly, just the vocabulary that you're
Yeah.
using, the contents that you're referring to, the context that you're providing, and making sure that you're not just saying this is going to make users feel bad, but like we recognize that this might actually risk this metric because this particular friction is being added or something like that. Just like
Yeah.
having that vocabulary and framing it in a certain way, it sounds like it's a large part of it. Is it there also an aspect of it that potentially comes down to the artifacts that you bring, like the documentation, like the way that you tell the story? It sounds like you also mentioned.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Telling the story, communication, and influencing in that way of telling a compelling story that can influence a room of people. Of course, this is part of it, right? And then if you can, in addition to that, support it with, and here's what we've seen in users. Here's what the usability tests show of what the upside could be. Here's what the numbers that we're dealing with today. And then even if you don't, so sometimes where another place where people struggle is they may say, well, I'm developing a new feature and we don't have any metrics. We don't have anything to go off of. And yes, and in that universe, you may still be able to have a projected ROI and return on investment. So basically, we anticipate that doing a feature like this is going to improve customer retention. And here's why. And here's what it's similar to, and here's what's different. Or there can be ways that you still speak the language of the room. You may even throw out a number. We think it's going to improve it in this way. And then over time, you will learn to get those numbers to be more accurate. But starting off of just getting it out there that you're not afraid of using those words because you don't have hard data to point to. This is what a lot of other people do. They come up with projections. That's what projections are. So it's like all the other sides of the business are doing the same thing. We think it's going to grow 5% this year, blah, blah, blah.
That's really great to be reminded of because in the staff designer course, I get asked a lot about
Yeah.
ways to get buy-in for changing something, like making an experience better when it's hard to quantify it or it's hard to
Yes.
measure. They just don't maybe have the right tooling in place yet. And it sounds like in that case, yes, we got to put our PM hat on a little bit and say, okay, we're estimating that it's going to maybe do this because, like you should have a reason that you're
Yeah.
estimating that amount.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that point. And it actually reminds me a couple of years ago, I took a business essentials for designers course with Designer
Mhm.
Fund. And the biggest thing that I learned from that course was that most of the numbers are fake. And
Yeah.
it just really helped me actually increase my confidence in having these kinds of conversations because a lot of this stuff is made up. And I thought for some reason that because people were stating it very confidently, that total addressable market must be like a real number. And it's like, no, like
It's
if
fuzzy.
there's a certain number of human beings in the United States, for example, and they all sleep, then the total addressable market for mattresses is the number of people in the United States is how they measure things like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yes,
Yeah.
like they don't even think about the fact that two people could fit on one bed or like whatever the
Right.
case may be. So like, yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of numbers that are in fact made up, and that really helps for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. I mean, totally right. And then there's the other side of it, though, which is so if you come out of the gate and you say, here's this feature I really want to build, here's why it's an important problem to solve today, here's why the business should care, here's how I see it impacting these numbers, then you also have to track those numbers. There's the follow through. And I think this is another piece of the equation that a lot of folks miss, which is that after the feature is shipped, documenting outcomes, analyzing results, like actually tracking the success of the work and then reporting that back is another way to increase your influence, to increase the trust, to make sure it's that the next time someone says, oh my gosh, you were right, this did increase that number. Let's fund this project.
That's really smart. So not just pitching, 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 and then going
Mhm.
silent, actually following
Mhm.
up later and saying, hey, okay, so you remember when I told you that thing? Here's what it
Yeah.
actually did. I'm
Mhm.
curious how you can toot your horn on a semi-regular basis or in these kinds of
Yeah.
situations without coming off as conceited or overconfident. Because I work with a lot of folks who
Yeah.
they maybe came from a background where they were taught to be more humble, so they feel a bit
Mhm.
nervous about
Yeah.
like shouting about themselves all the time. How do you coax people to maybe change the way that they think about that?
So again, if we see our role as design leaders on the team, then it is also our role to, I guess the way I'll put it is advance design in the organization. And in order to advance design in the organization, which we do as a team, as a leadership team, then we need to make our work and our team's work more visible. So there's an aspect of your role that is that. And it doesn't mean that's not hard for people. I mean, this is where coaching comes in, right? People have different cultural backgrounds or they have different experience at previous businesses they've worked on. I coach some folks in Europe that work with American teams and it's like really different in terms of how these things work, right? And just like culture. There's so many reasons why it may not come naturally or why you may be part of a different culture and adapting to the culture of your business. But I think this responsibility of make it visible, this isn't about you. It's actually about the work and your team and advancing your team and advancing influence of your team. Maybe that gets to nuanced ways of how do you share this. Don't directly toot your own horn, celebrate the wins of the team, which is not just going to be you, right? Another thing that has an impact around these wins is using the wins as examples of where good work is done, but also a template for the kind of work that you want to be doing more of, or why you need more resources for the next initiative you're proposing. So it's this building block. The wins help teach other people on your team, including designers on your team, right? The sharing of that. But it also helps the org understand design's place and why they want a designer on this project versus just an engineer creating a prototype. Done. There's
Love
a reason.
that. Like it's a way to show the return on investment almost,
Yes.
and then it show we could do more if we had more
Yeah.
support or time, etc. Yeah, I really like that idea of focusing it more on the team than just like, I made this thing. It's like, no, we
Yeah.
as a group learned something. Here's what it was. Here's what we were given permission to do or asked to do. And then through this process, we learned these things. And yeah, here's some things that we can take away as a business potentially in terms of how we might drive future projects. I love the idea of that reframe, and you can still keep that feeling of humility, which is a wonderful thing to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Decentering self is a wonderful thing to do in a lot of cases. But yeah, focusing it more on how can I make sure that the team is learning and that design is represented appropriately.
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Mhm.
I am also curious. You mentioned that you're working with a lot of clients on some of these subjects when it comes
Mhm.
to building their leadership toolkit, really. When do you usually see people start to reach out, and what's that process usually like of working with somebody? I'm sure there's different tracks or different types of people who reach out. I'm curious if you see people fall into certain buckets where it's like, you
Yeah.
definitely need a leadership coach.
It's a great question. When it comes down to it, people reach out to a leadership coach when they really have readiness for a behavior change. So they may have been mulling on it for years or decades. And they may have read a bunch of books, and yet still the same pattern keeps on coming up for them, and the same obstacle. So I feel like there's this moment in time that we all can reach of like, I've tried a lot of things and I feel stuck. And that's the commonality of like I feel stuck and I've got high motivation to solve this. Like, no more, I'm done. It's that moment or that readiness that leads to seeking a coach and also getting a lot out of coaching, both of those things. Because I think if someone's, oh, maybe I want to change, I don't know, and then they come to a coach, this isn't going to be a good coaching engagement either because they're not quite ready yet to put in the work. So, what does that really mean? It means there's a behavior or a habit that you've had for a long time that's holding you back, and you have like fuzzy awareness on it or crystal clear awareness on it, but that it's time. And it could be something around, like we've talked about a few already. Like it could be something around obstacles around influence, or like how you see seniority, or talking to people more senior to you, or cultural differences. Like it could be stuff like this, or it could be a point in someone's career where they're really moving from the tactical to the strategic. And that's so uncomfortable. What has been really powerful for them so far is like execution. And they're really, really good at that. And now they're feeling uncomfortable. It feels like they're working in ambiguity. There's always some moment in time. And I usually ask this in the first coaching call. I do initial chemistry calls with folks to make sure it's a fit on both sides and just hear about their situation. And it's one of the things I'm looking to hear more about is, what is this turning point for you? Why now? Another why now is just there's so much uncertainty in our world and ambiguity in our industry right now, and it's moving so fast. And having support as you really gain more clarity and confidence in how you want to show up in this environment can be really valuable. That is when I am most proud of coaching engagements. It's when I've helped someone get a lot of clarity in who they are, how they want to show up, how to lead authentically, how to lean into their strengths, and that there's movement for them, that they feel this unstuckness.
I've talked to a variety of designers in just the past year about some of the changes that are happening in the industry at large, and we're all figuring out how to use some of the new tools that are coming out and what
Mm.
AI is going to mean for our jobs. And something that I've been pointing to is past iterations of our change in this industry. And a lot of folks weren't maybe around for that moment where we had to go from Photoshop to like Illustrator for a
Yeah.
hot sec there, maybe Acture. Yeah, there's so many tools. We kind of all
Yeah.
converged on Sketch at a certain point. And then Figma happened and we were like, oh, finally, we don't have to like worry about figuring out how we're all going to merge in our changes anymore. This is great. And
Mhm.
now this is, I feel like, the first real big change in such a long time that it's scary.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that that would be a great moment for people to be like, what do I want my job to be moving forward? Like, how do I adapt in
Yeah.
this moment? That's
Yeah.
pretty intense. I am
Yeah.
curious if you have, opinions or things that you're kind of seeing as somebody who is coaching design leaders, where people are landing in terms of how they prefer to use AI versus what do they want to drive? What do they want to own? Because this is a
Mhm.
conversation I'm having with a lot of designers right now.
Yeah. And it's a super interesting conversation because there's so much moving across the board and so much moving so fast. I really agree with what you're saying. And we've been here before, right? Like there have been these shakeups with tooling. There have been shakeups even, I mean, even if you go back more historically, from UI designer to product designer, this was a major shakeup of like, how are we positioned in the org? And even you hear about the three-legged stool of product, PM engineering and design. This was not always the case. That was a major shakeup in terms of how we were involved and seen as strategic. So there's lots to look back at and be like, okay, evolution, it happens. When it happens, it's hard, but we make it through. So that's the first thing to say in the optimistic lens. But in terms of what I'm seeing, yeah, I feel like it's all over the map in terms of what I see in my coaching clients around relationship to AI and shifting everything. One response is positive and energized. And there's a lot of that actually. And then the other extreme is incredibly fearful or unmotivated, right? And both exist. So on the positive and energized bit, like the teams, there's lots of clients I see and their teams that are leaning in and are really excited about how AI is changing their process as designers, whether that's improving their abilities around speed or efficiency or expanding their creativity, taking things that were repetitive tasks like creating a list view that they've done how many times and making it so that they're not doing that kind of work anymore. They're not doing the busy work and they're allowed to get more strategic, get more creative, create the new patterns, innovate. There's a lot that is exciting around what it provides. There's other things that I think are pretty exciting that I hear trends on of some of my clients are really interested in AI policy, safety, and ethics, and how we use these tools responsibly. And that's so important right now and really needed to have people that are leaning in there. And then on the other side, I see people who are uninspired and maybe want to get out of tech. They're like, this is my moment. And they're wanting to focus more on in-person experiences or hands-on industries like industrial design or mechanical design. There's other places where people are like, wait a second, I don't want to be behind a computer anymore. I'm done. There's places for both of this. And then there's plenty of shades of gray, right? It's not all black and white. I think there's designers becoming more technical and being able to oftentimes ship code to production. This is awesome. What a great way to add to our toolkits and to be empowered to actually have similar output to an engineer. That's amazing. There's things like this that are really exciting, right? And there's downsides to that of maybe you're not comfortable being technical. Maybe we're still not getting paid the same as designers, as engineers, and that feels unfair. There's so much that's complex about it. But that's maybe the gray zone, right? And then there's a very real trend that's also in the gray zone of how prototyping has gotten to be democratized and more accessible. You find your PMs and your engineers creating fully functional design prototypes. I even had a recent client who had their CEO of their company create a fully functional prototype and give it to the design team and say, please build this.
Wow.
Wow. So roles and ownership are less clear. And that is hard. I've thought a lot about this and it comes up with clients a lot is like, okay, what is AI good for? If we're approaching this, yes, it's fuzzy. Yes, there's a gray zone. That's the point, but glass is half full. AI is good at a lot of things. Let's lean into that. And another reflection I've been having recently is designers are actually really good at learning new tools. We are really good at that.
Yeah, we're
So
made
if
for that.
we're made for that in terms of how our brains work, there's actually leaning into that. Learn the new tools better and faster so that you can be the go-to. So that's another piece of things. But there's this other bit of like AI can be good at a lot of things, but there's lots that I think are just still so important for designers to show up with. Things like our strengths around problem solving, making sure that we're solving the right problems, like advocating for customer needs, principled thinking. We think in principled ways. So that means design for good. It means systems thinking, skills around communication and influence, storytelling, having good taste. We all know the quality is not quite there yet. So good taste and having the high bar for quality, creative direction. These are things that we are still very, very much needed for. AI is a useful tool, but it's about our partnership with AI that makes good products.
Something I'm always asking people is what's keeping you in design
Yeah.
and where do you feel like the opportunity is for
Mhm.
designers in this kind of world? And
Mhm.
yeah, I've definitely heard folks say, I'm excited to actually make sure that I'm always focusing on the right problem with my team. And critical
Yeah.
thinking is more important now because it's so much easier to build. Are there other things that you've noticed are keeping people in design or where designers are being leaned on for their expertise at this moment?
This is maybe debatable, but true innovation, true human-centered innovation, I think is still human.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that's what designers are good at. We're creative leaders. We're good at creating new things. So like AI can do a little bit of that, but it's more about
The averaging of
curating and
things.
averaging and compositing. And that's more junior designer stuff. Do you know what I mean? True skilled staff level designers are so needed right now. And maybe this gets back to what's my job, what's not my job. That is an obstacle that really can hold people back. And I actually see that in relation to AI a ton right now, because as roles blur, there's even companies that are like, I'm AI designer or whatever, making titles that are like, really, what does that even mean? Are you a designer? Or maybe it's like AI specialist and it's designer, product PM, and engineer all in one, whatever. I don't know. It's messy, right? But adaptability and really leaning into what are we good at? We're good at collaboration. We're good at the human side of things. So, like, bringing that into play and not forgetting that piece, true divergent ideas, not shipping the first thing. That's the kind of thing that people are like, oh, that's where I'm valued. This is my place in all of this.
Thank you for sharing all of this perspective. It has given me energy, and I hope that it gives the folks who listen to this energy as well. To close out, I have two questions. The first of which
Yeah.
is, what advice would you have for someone who is new to the staff designer position?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, oh my gosh, I'm gonna say something that you might not expect, but read Kat's book. That's my
Hey,
first advice is like read the staff designer book because
boom.
it's really good. I was just looking over a chapter recently and I actually recommend it to a lot of my coaching clients. I even recommend it to directors that I coach for their teams because there's lots of people that really get stuck at this. I don't understand. I've been at senior level and I really don't understand how to break into the staff designer role. And your book outlines a lot of what is the true difference. So start by reading Kat's
Oh,
book. And
yay.
then it's like practice, experiment, find your mentors inside of work. So read Kat's book. Second, practice, experiment. I think there's this piece of own your place in the room. Know that you've become a staff designer. You're there for a reason. You've been doing good work. Your team believes in you. Own it. Own your strengths and be adaptable because you're in a position, AI aside, which is like everyone has to be adaptable. At this juncture of moving from senior to staff, there's a lot of transition in terms of what your responsibilities are and how you're leading a team. Maybe there's other designers on your team that you're leading that you haven't done that before. There's so many new skills, adaptability.
That's something that I definitely brought the first time that I was in that role.
Yeah.
Thanks. I remember feeling, I can't believe I'm in this room right now with these directors and they're all looking at me like I know the answer. Am I actually qualified to be doing this job after all? And then I remember having a conversation with myself and I was like, well, Sarah hired me for this job. So she must see that I'm able to do this job. So I'm going to
Yes.
just do my best and show up the best way humanly possible. And hopefully that will be enough. If she thinks I can do it, I can do it. So yeah, thanks. I'm not gonna cry, but yeah, I am really grateful to you
Yeah.
because I felt like I had to step up and show, yes, in fact, I am able to do this job. And it was a huge learning curve for me. And I fully understood afterward, oh, this is what everybody's talking about. So grateful for you for working with me on that. And I imagine that everybody who has worked with you in this new capacity as a leadership coach, I'm sure they're really grateful as well. I hear great things from my friends who have worked with you, and they're always like, can't wait to bring this to Sarah. Thanks for all that you do to help grow people. Final question. Where can
Yes.
people find you on the internet?
Ooh, great question. So my website is hellogradient.com. So that's Gradient. That's a good place to find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to people. There's times where I have a lot of availability. Right now, I'm actually full at capacity,
Woo!
but which is
Congrats.
awesome. I'm happy about. But there's always one or two slots that open up every month. So I'm always happy to talk to people and maybe we can slot you in the future. So
Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. I appreciate you so much. All
you
right.
too.
Till next time.
Bye.